Have you ever stayed awake at night replaying that conversation you had months ago? That betrayal that still burns inside you? Those words that should never have been said to you? Yes, I know, and we've all been there. That feeling of carrying a backpack full of stones on your chest where each stone is a grudge, a wound that won't heal, a score to settle with someone who probably doesn't even remember what they did to you. It's exhausting, isn't it? Today I'm going to teach you something that can change your life forever. How Stoic philosophy, that wisdom from more than 2,000 years ago, can be your best ally in truly learning to forgive and finding that inner peace you've been searching for. This isn't cheap self-help or pretty Instagram quotes. It's a proven methodology that has helped emperors, slaves, philosophers, and everyday people free themselves from the weight of resentment. I'm going to reveal 3 Stoic lessons that will completely transform the way you see forgiveness. The third lesson will leave you speechless because it goes against everything you've been taught about forgiving. But before we begin, if you find value in these episodes, subscribe and turn on notifications. Every like tells me this content truly serves you, and that motivates me to keep creating material that can change your life. Before diving into these lessons, I want to share a story that will help you better understand the wisdom contained in this material. Once upon a time, there was an old gardener named Aurelio who lived in a small village surrounded by mountains. For decades, he had cultivated the most beautiful garden in the entire region, full of exotic flowers and fruit trees that fed much of the community. One spring morning, he woke up to find his garden completely destroyed. His neighbor, driven by envy and resentment, had poisoned the soil during the night. The villagers expected Aurelio to be furious, to seek revenge, to be consumed by bitterness. But to everyone's surprise, the old man simply looked at the remains of his garden with serenity. When they asked how he could be so calm, Aurelio replied, "I've learned that the poison my neighbor put in my land cannot touch my soul unless I allow it. If I carry his hatred in my heart, I will have allowed it to destroy not only my garden but also my peace." Instead of seeking revenge, Aurelio began to rebuild his garden. But this time he did something different. He planted a small vegetable patch right on the border with his neighbor's house, and each week he left a basket of fresh vegetables at his door without saying a word. At first, the neighbor was suspicious, but over time, Aurelio's constant kindness began to soften his hardened heart. Months later, the neighbor approached Aurelio with tears in his eyes, confessing his crime and asking for forgiveness. Aurelio smiled and said, "I had already forgiven you that first night. Not for you, but for me. Because I understood that holding a grudge is like holding a burning coal with the intention of throwing it at someone else. The only one who gets burned is you." The moral of this story reveals the essence of Stoic forgiveness. We do not forgive to free others from their guilt, but to free ourselves from the prison of resentment. Now that you have this fundamental concept clear, let's begin with the first lesson. Lesson 1. The control of the uncontrollable. Have you ever wondered why there are situations that still hurt you years after they happened? The answer lies in one of the fundamental principles of Stoicism, the dichotomy of control. The Stoics divided everything in life into 2 simple but powerful categories: what you can control and what you cannot control. Here comes the part that may sting at first but will free you forever. You cannot control what others did to you, what they said, how they acted, or the intentions they had. That has already happened. It's out of your reach. It belongs to the realm of the uncontrollable. It's like trying to change yesterday's weather. Impossible and exhausting. Epictetus, who was a slave before becoming one of the most influential Stoic philosophers, explained it this way: "It's not events that disturb us, but our judgments about those events." Think about it for a moment. The betrayal, the lie, the offense you suffered has already occurred. The real damage is not in the past event itself, but in how you continue to interpret it in your mind day after day. Imagine you have an open wound on your arm. Every day, instead of letting it heal, you scratch it, open it again, pour salt on it. That's exactly what you do when you constantly relive the offense in your mind, when you analyze it over and over, when you keep asking yourself why they did it to you. You're keeping open a wound that should have already healed. The key is understanding that the only thing you can truly control is your present response to what happened. You cannot change the past, but you can change how that past affects your present and your future. This understanding doesn't minimize the pain you felt, nor does it justify what was done to you. It simply gives you back the power over your own life. When someone betrays you, lies to you, or hurts you, that person made a choice that reflected their character, not yours. Their action belongs to their story, not to yours. Your story begins with how you choose to respond. Will you allow someone else's decisions to dictate your inner peace? Or will you reclaim your power and decide how to live from this moment on? Marcus Aurelius, emperor of the Roman Empire and Stoic philosopher, wrote in his personal meditations, "How much more at ease you are when you have no opinion about it. The offense has no power of its own. The power is given by you, through your thoughts, the importance you assign to it, and the times you relive it in your mind." This doesn't mean you should be passive or that you can't take practical measures to protect yourself in the future. It means you recognize the difference between responding with wisdom and reacting from pain. When you understand that you can't control others' past actions, but you can control your present response, you've taken the first step toward true freedom. The practice of this lesson is simple but powerful. Every time you catch yourself dwelling on what someone did to you, ask yourself, "Is this under my control right now?" If the answer is no, consciously redirect your attention toward something you can control: your breathing, your present thoughts, the actions you can take today to improve your situation. It's not easy at first. Your mind is used to wallowing in pain, seeking justice, wanting things to have been different. But each time you practice this principle, you strengthen your mental muscle. You become freer, more in control of your own experience. Lesson 2. Compassion as strength. This is where things get interesting, because the second Stoic lesson on forgiveness will challenge everything you probably think about compassion. Most people confuse compassion with weakness, forgiveness with being a doormat, and understanding with justification. But the Stoics understood something few people grasp. Compassion is one of the highest forms of inner strength. When someone hurts you, your first natural reaction is to see them as your enemy, as someone malicious who chose to harm you. But the Stoics invite us to do something revolutionary. Try to understand what led that person to act as they did. Not to justify their behavior, but to free yourself from the poison of hatred. Seneca, one of the great Stoic masters, had a fascinating perspective on this. He said, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end." When someone betrays or hurts you, they are most likely acting from their own pain, their own unhealed wounds, their ignorance, or their weakness. This does not excuse their behavior, but it helps you understand something fundamental. Hurt people tend to hurt others. Think of it this way. Have you ever acted poorly when you were at your lowest point? Have you ever said hurtful things when you were scared, wounded, or desperate? We've all done it. The difference is that when you do it, you know your context, your circumstances, your internal struggles. But when others do it, you only see the surface. You only experience the impact of their actions on your life. The Stoics teach that when you develop the ability to see the person who hurt you as a complex human being with their own battles, fears, and limitations, something magical happens. The power that person had over your inner peace begins to dissolve. Not because what they did was right, but because you understand that their action says more about their internal state than about your worth as a person. This understanding is not something that happens overnight. It requires practice, patience with yourself, and a genuine commitment to your own healing. But when you begin to see the one who hurt you as someone likely acting from their own darkness, confusion, or pain, you discover that compassion doesn't weaken you. It strengthens you. Why? Because when you have compassion for someone who hurt you, you are no longer a victim of their actions. You become someone who can see beyond the surface, someone with the wisdom and inner strength not to be dragged into drama, revenge, or resentment. You become free. Marcus Aurelius expressed it beautifully. Whenever you want to cheer yourself, think of the good qualities of your companions. But he went further and applied this even to those who had offended him. He tried to find something, even something small, that could help him see their humanity. This doesn't mean you have to trust that person again, nor does it mean you should expose yourself to their toxic behavior. Stoic compassion is intelligent, not naive. You can have compassion for someone from a distance. You can understand their limitations without allowing them to hurt you again. The practice of this lesson begins with a simple but powerful exercise. The next time you think about someone who hurt you, instead of focusing on what they did, ask yourself, what kind of inner pain must this person have been carrying to act this way? Don't seek to excuse their behavior. Seek to understand their humanity. At first, this may feel forced, even uncomfortable. Your ego will resist, wanting to keep that person in the villain category because it's simpler, more satisfying to the wounded pride. But when you persist in this exercise, when you genuinely try to see the full humanity of the one who hurt you, something extraordinary happens. Resentment loses its grip on you. The Stoics understood that compassion is not a gift you give to the one who hurt you. It's a gift you give to yourself. It's the key that opens the prison of resentment you've been living in. And here's the most powerful part. When you develop genuine compassion for the one who hurt you, you not only free yourself from pain, but you also become a wiser, stronger, and more resilient person. This strength born from compassion prepares you for the third lesson, perhaps the most revolutionary of them all. Lesson 3. Forgiveness as an act of personal power. And here we arrive at the lesson that will completely change your perspective on forgiveness. Everything you've been told about forgiving is probably wrong. You've been told to forgive for the other person, to forgive because it's the right thing to do, to forgive so you can be a good person. But the Stoics understood a far deeper and more powerful truth. Forgiveness is the most self-serving and liberating act you can perform. Yes, you heard that right. Self-serving in the best sense of the word. Because when you forgive, you don't do it out of charity. You don't do it out of kindness. You don't do it to feel morally superior to the person who hurt you. You do it because it's the smartest decision you can make for your own life, your own peace, your own future. Epictetus, who knew better than anyone what it meant to be treated unfairly, put it this way: it is impossible for anyone to harm you without your permission. At first, this might sound insensitive or even cruel. How could you give permission to be hurt? But when you dig deeper into this idea, you discover a liberating truth. The initial damage, the betrayal, the lie, the offense, that already happened. It's history. But the ongoing damage, the one that still hurts months or years later, that's being created by you every time you relive the event, every time you turn it over in your mind, every time you allow that past experience to rob you of present peace. The true power of Stoic forgiveness lies in this understanding. You do not forgive to free the one who hurt you from the consequences of their actions. You forgive to free yourself from the emotional consequences of continuing to carry that resentment. It's a strategic decision, an investment in your own inner freedom. Imagine carrying a backpack full of stones every day. Each stone represents a grievance, an offense, a wound. Over time, the backpack becomes so heavy you can barely walk. Stoic forgiveness is the act of taking off that backpack, not because the stones have magically disappeared, but because you decide you will no longer carry that unnecessary weight. Seneca put it brilliantly. Anger is a punishment we give ourselves for the mistakes of others. When you don't forgive, when you hold on to resentment, you are choosing to punish yourself day after day for something another person did. Isn't that madness when you look at it from this perspective? Here's the part that excites me most to share with you, because this lesson goes far beyond simply letting go of resentment. Stoic forgiveness turns you into the architect of your own emotional experience. When you forgive from this perspective, you're not being passive, weak, or a martyr. You're taking absolute control of your inner life. Marcus Aurelius had a phrase I love: the best revenge is not to be like your enemy. But the Stoics took this even further. It wasn't just about not becoming like the one who hurt you. It was about using that painful experience as fuel to become a stronger, wiser, more resilient version of yourself. Think of it this way. When someone betrays you, they're giving you valuable information. They're showing you who they truly are, teaching you lessons about the boundaries you need to set, about the warning signs you must recognize, about the type of people you want to surround yourself with in the future. From this perspective, even the most painful experience becomes a teacher. The Stoics understood that suffering is inevitable in human life, but prolonged suffering is optional. When you choose not to forgive, you are choosing prolonged suffering. You are deciding that your inner peace depends on that other person changing, apologizing, admitting they're wrong, or getting what they deserve. But what if that never happens? Will you sacrifice the rest of your life waiting for something that may never come? Stoic forgiveness tells you, your peace depends on no one but you. Your happiness is not in the hands of the one who hurt you. Your future is not determined by your past. It's an act of personal sovereignty, a declaration of emotional independence, but beware, because here's a trap many fall into. Stoic forgiveness does not mean you have to reconcile with the one who hurt you. It does not mean you have to trust them again or act as if nothing happened. You can forgive someone completely and still decide that person has no place in your life. You can release resentment without exposing yourself to harm again. In fact, the Stoics were very clear about this. Seneca wrote, "Forgive many, but trust few." The wisdom lies in distinguishing between forgiveness and trust. Forgiveness is something you do for yourself, for your own liberation. Trust is something that must be earned, and once lost, requires consistent action to be restored. So how do you put this lesson into practice? Start by asking yourself this powerful question every time you feel resentment. What am I depriving myself of by holding on to this pain? Because when you don't forgive, you're not just carrying the weight of resentment. You're also depriving yourself of the mental and emotional energy you could use to build a better life. Every minute you spend thinking about the one who hurt you is a minute you're not investing in your growth, your positive relationships, your dreams, your happiness. It's as if you have a limited daily budget of attention and energy, and you're spending a significant portion of it on something that brings you no benefit at all. The Stoics had a fascinating exercise for this. They imagined themselves as an external observer of their own life. If you were the advisor to your best friend, and your friend was in your exact situation, what would you tell them? Would you tell them to keep carrying that resentment? Would you tell them to keep letting someone from the past control their present? Probably not. This perspective helps you see that forgiveness is not an act of weakness or naivety. It's an act of strategic intelligence. It's as if you were the CEO of your own emotional life, making decisions based on what is best for your long-term well-being, not what feels good in the moment. And here's something that might surprise you. When you truly forgive from this Stoic perspective, something magical happens in your relationship with the future. You no longer live in fear of being hurt again, because you know you have the internal tools to process any pain that may come. You no longer need the world to be perfect for you to be okay. You no longer depend on others behaving a certain way to maintain your inner peace. You become what the Stoics called an impregnable fortress. Not because you're hard or insensitive, but because you've developed an inner strength that doesn't rely on external circumstances. You've learned that your emotional well-being is your responsibility and your power, not something others can give or take away. And here comes the most beautiful paradox of Stoic forgiveness. When you truly forgive for these reasons, from personal power and not moral obligation, something extraordinary happens. You not only free yourself, but you also become a living example of what's possible. You become someone who inspires others to find their own liberation. People around you start to notice something different about you. There's a calmness, a strength, a presence that wasn't there before. It's not that you've forgotten what happened. It's that you've integrated that experience in a way that made you stronger, not weaker. And that transformation is the real victory. Marcus Aurelius had a reflection that I think is perfect to close this lesson. It is always possible to be kind, and it may be that kindness is all that is needed. But he wasn't talking about kindness as weakness. He was talking about kindness as the highest expression of inner strength. When you forgive from personal power, because it's the smartest choice for your life, you discover that you haven't just freed yourself from the past, you've opened up an entirely new future. A future where your happiness doesn't depend on the actions of others, where your peace isn't in someone else's hands, where you are truly free. This is the essence of Stoic forgiveness. It's not something you do out of charity. It's something you do out of intelligence. It's not something you do to be good. It's something you do to be free. And that freedom, that inner peace that comes from knowing you are the master of your own emotional experience, is something no one can ever take from you. But wait, there's something else you need to know before you can truly apply these 3 lessons in your life. Stoic forgiveness isn't a one-time event, like flipping a switch and done, problem solved. No, my friend. True forgiveness is a process, a daily practice, a muscle you need to strengthen constantly. I'm going to be completely honest with you, because you deserve the full truth, not just the pretty part. You're going to have days when you wake up and feel like all that forgiveness work has vanished. You'll have moments when anger comes back like a giant wave. Moments when you catch yourself fantasizing about revenge. Moments when you think this whole Stoic forgiveness thing is just a nice theory that doesn't work in real life. And you know what? That's completely normal. It's part of the process. The Stoics weren't emotional superheroes who never felt pain or anger. They were human beings, just like you and me, who had simply developed more effective tools to handle life's inevitable storms. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful emperor of his time, wrote in his personal journals about his own internal struggles, about the days when he had to remind himself of these principles over and over, not because he was weak, but because he understood that inner strength requires constant maintenance, like a garden you need to tend every day. So, how do you keep forgiveness alive when your mind wants to drag you back into resentment? The Stoics had specific strategies for this, proven techniques you can start using today. The first strategy is what I call the morning reminder. Every morning, before your mind fills with the day's worries, take literally 2 minutes to remind yourself why you chose to forgive. Not for the other person, not to be good, but for your own freedom. Mentally repeat, "Today I choose my peace over my wounded pride." It sounds simple, almost silly, but there's something powerful about starting the day with this conscious intention. It's like telling your subconscious, "This is the course we've chosen, and even if emotions try to pull us away, this is our true north." The second strategy is the inner observer technique. When you feel resentment starting to boil in your chest, instead of fighting it or being swept away by it, simply observe it, as if you were a scientist studying an interesting phenomenon. How curious my mind is going back to that story again. Look how my body tenses, how my breathing speeds up. This technique, which the Stoics called prososche, or mindful attention, gives you incredible power. Because when you observe your emotions instead of being carried away by them, you automatically create space between you and the feeling. And in that space you have the power to choose. Seneca used to say, "We can't stop birds from flying over our heads, but we can stop them from building a nest in our hair." Resentful thoughts will appear. It's inevitable. But you decide whether you allow them to settle and multiply in your mind. The third strategy is perhaps the most powerful of all: constructive redirection. Every time you catch yourself thinking about the one who hurt you, immediately redirect that mental energy towards something that is building your future. A project that excites you, a relationship you want to strengthen, a skill you're developing, a dream you're pursuing. This is not about repressing or denying the thought, but about acknowledging it and then consciously choosing to place your attention on something more productive. It's like being the conductor of your own mind. The instruments will play, some louder than others, but you decide which one will carry the main melody. The Stoics understood something fundamental about human nature. What we focus on grows. If you constantly focus on the grievance, the injustice, how you were wronged, that will grow until it dominates your life experience. But if you focus on your growth, your possibilities, the lessons you can extract, that's what will grow. Now here's something else I want to share with you. Something very few people understand about Stoic forgiveness. Forgiving does not mean being passive in the face of injustice. The Stoics were not people who let themselves be trampled on or who ignored when something was wrong. Quite the opposite. Marcus Aurelius commanded armies, made hard decisions, and set clear boundaries when necessary, but he did it from a place of inner clarity, not emotional reactivity. There's a vast difference between responding from wisdom and reacting from pain. When you forgive stoically, you're not telling the world it's okay to hurt you. You're saying, I will not allow your behavior to dictate my inner state, but that doesn't mean I won't protect myself or take appropriate action. You can forgive someone completely and at the same time set ironclad boundaries to protect yourself in the future. You can release resentment and still seek justice if needed. You can have compassion for the humanity of the one who hurt you and still decide they have no place in your life. This distinction is crucial because many people avoid forgiveness thinking it means becoming vulnerable again or pretending nothing happened. But Stoic forgiveness is intelligent, not naive. In fact, when you forgive from this perspective, you become more emotionally intelligent, not more vulnerable. Because you no longer react from pain, you respond from clarity. You no longer make decisions based on past wounds but on present wisdom. And here's something fascinating. When you truly integrate these lessons, when Stoic forgiveness becomes part of your natural way of processing difficult experiences, something extraordinary happens to your capacity for future relationships. You no longer enter new relationships carrying the emotional baggage of the past. You no longer project onto innocent people the patterns of those who hurt you before. You no longer live with that emotional armor that protects you but also isolates you. You become available for deeper, more authentic, more fulfilling connections. The Stoics called this ataraxia, a state of inner tranquility that doesn't depend on external circumstances. It's not indifference, it's not coldness, it's not disconnection. It's a deep peace that comes from knowing you have the internal tools to handle anything life throws at you. Imagine what your life would be like if you knew with absolute certainty that no betrayal, no lie, no disappointment could rob you of your inner peace for more than a moment. Not because you're immune to pain, but because you know exactly how to process it and turn it into strength. But there's an aspect of Stoic forgiveness I want you to understand deeply, because it's what makes it truly revolutionary. When you truly forgive, you don't just free yourself from the past, you also change your relationship with the future. Most people who have been hurt develop what psychologists call hypervigilance. They live constantly on alert, expecting the next betrayal, the next disappointment, the next pain. It's like living in a permanent state of war where every new person is a potential enemy until proven otherwise. But when you apply Stoic forgiveness, when you truly understand that your well-being doesn't depend on other people's behavior, that hypervigilance naturally dissolves. Not because you become naive or blindly trusting, but because you know you can handle whatever comes. It's the difference between being a soldier in enemy territory, always tense, always ready for attack, and being an explorer in unknown territory, alert but confident in your navigation skills. The quality of life is completely different. And this is where the three lessons we've explored come together into something greater than the sum of their parts. When you understand that you can only control your response, when you develop compassion as strength, when you use forgiveness as an act of personal power, you're not just healing past wounds, you're building a life philosophy that will make you more resilient, wiser, and freer for the rest of your days. The Stoics had a long-term vision of human life. It wasn't just about surviving hardships, but about using every difficulty as raw material to build a stronger, nobler, wiser character. They saw every injustice as an opportunity to practice virtue, every betrayal as a chance to develop inner strength. Marcus Aurelius put it this way: every obstacle is an opportunity to practice some virtue. Betrayal gives you the chance to practice forgiveness. Lies give you the chance to practice understanding. Pain gives you the chance to practice resilience. From this perspective, even the most painful experiences in your life become disguised gifts. Not because pain is good in itself, but because your response to pain can turn you into a more evolved version of yourself. And this leads us to something I want you to seriously consider. What if the person who hurt you the most was, without knowing it, giving you the most valuable opportunity of your life to grow? What if that painful experience was exactly what you needed to develop the inner strength you now have? I'm not suggesting you should be grateful for the pain, or that you have to see the one who hurt you as your benefactor, but I am inviting you to consider that perhaps that experience, as painful as it was, has given you something invaluable, the chance to know your own inner strength. The Stoics believe that everything in life has a purpose, not a mystical, predetermined purpose, but a purpose you can create with your response, with the way you choose to integrate that experience into your personal story. And there you have it, my friend. These 3 Stoic lessons aren't just ancient theory from dusty books. They are proven tools that have freed millions of people throughout history from the crushing weight of resentment. The control of the uncontrollable gives you back power over your own life. Compassion as strength frees you from the poison of hatred, and forgiveness as an act of personal power makes you the architect of your own emotional well-being. Remember, Stoic forgiveness is not a gift you give to the one who hurt you. It's the most valuable gift you can give yourself. It's your declaration of emotional independence, your way of telling the world that your inner peace is not for sale, that your happiness does not depend on the actions of others. The next time you feel that backpack of stones on your chest, remember the story of Aurelio the gardener. He understood that the poison in his soil didn't have to touch his soul, and you too can choose not to carry the burning coal of resentment. If this episode has helped you, if you feel these lessons can change your life as they've changed mine, give it a like, comment where you're listening from, and share this content with someone who needs it. Subscribe and turn on notifications because I have much more to teach you about how Stoic philosophy can transform your life. And remember this: forgiving doesn't make you weak. It makes you free. It doesn't make you naive. It makes you wise. It doesn't make you vulnerable. It makes you invincible. Because when you learn to forgive like the Stoics, you discover that your inner peace is the only thing you truly need to live well. See you in the next episode, where we'll continue exploring how ancient wisdom can solve modern problems. Until then.